Some people do not become strong by choice, they become strong because they had no one. Strength like that carries a story most people will never understand. And the most dangerous ones, trauma-born empath loners. They walk quietly, they observe deeply, and they feel more than they ever show. Only a small number of people survive this transformation. Many begin the journey, but very few come out on the other side with control, clarity, and power. If you have always felt different, this might explain why. There is a hidden pattern behind this personality. It is rooted in early emotional pressure, silent survival, and a mind that learned to read people faster than words. These individuals did not develop empathy as a gift. It was built under stress. It became a tool for protection. Over time, that tool turned into something sharper. They can sense tension before it rises. They can hear truth inside silence. They can feel shifts in energy that others miss completely. And that changes everything. This video will break down how this transformation really happens. You will understand the early stages, the hidden struggles, and the turning point that separates those who stay stuck from those who rise above it. There are lesser-known truths behind this personality that rarely get discussed. The isolation is deeper than it looks. The awareness comes with a cost. And the final shift is something most people never reach. That is where everything changes. Stay until the end because the final part reveals the moment when a trauma-born empath stops surviving and starts controlling their world. That shift is rare, it is quiet, and it is powerful in a way that most people will never recognize until it is too late. Once it happens, there is no going back to the old version of them. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the hidden sides of human behavior, psychology, and personal transformation. If this kind of content speaks to you, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for more videos that challenge the way you see yourself and the world around you. A trauma-born empath is someone who was not born sensitive. They were shaped by pain. Their awareness did not come from comfort or peaceful growth. It came from pressure, confusion, and emotional instability. In the early stages of life, they were surrounded by unpredictable reactions, shifting moods, or environments where safety was never guaranteed. Because of that, their mind adapted in a very specific way. They began to observe everything. Small changes in tone, facial expressions, silence, tension in a room. Things most people ignore became signals they could not afford to miss. They grew up in emotional chaos where reactions often carried consequences. A simple mistake could lead to anger. A quiet moment could suddenly turn into conflict. Over time, they learned that understanding people quickly was the only way to stay safe. It was never about curiosity, it was about protection. Their brain started connecting patterns. They could sense when someone was about to raise their voice. They could feel when something was off, even when no words were spoken. This constant alertness slowly turned into deep emotional awareness. As this pattern continued, they developed a unique ability to read people with accuracy that feels almost unnatural. They notice hidden intentions. They pick up on emotions that others try to hide. They feel energy shifts before actions happen. This is not a skill they trained for success. It is something their environment forced them to build. And because it was built under pressure, it became sharp, fast, and deeply rooted in instinct. At the same time, this awareness comes with an internal weight. They process emotions deeply, sometimes too deeply. They absorb the atmosphere around them without trying. It becomes difficult to turn off. Even in calm situations, their mind stays alert, scanning for signs, reading between every line. This creates a constant state of mental activity that few people around them truly understand. Their empathy is not softness, it is survival. It is the result of learning how to navigate emotional unpredictability with precision. It is a response to an environment where understanding others was the only form of control they had. Over time, this survival mechanism becomes a core part of who they are, shaping how they think, how they feel, and how they connect with the world around them. They become loners for reasons that run deeper than simple preference. Trust is often broken early, sometimes in ways that are subtle and repeated rather than loud and obvious. Promises feel unstable, emotions feel inconsistent, and safety feels temporary. Over time, this creates a quiet understanding that relying on others can lead to disappointment or emotional strain. It is not always a single moment that causes this shift. It builds slowly through experiences that teach them to stay guarded, to observe before opening up, and to keep a distance that protects their inner balance. At the same time, they begin to see more in people than most ever notice. Small behaviors carry meaning. Tone, hesitation, body language, and even silence start to reveal patterns. They recognize when someone is being genuine and when something feels off. This level of awareness makes social interaction more complex. Conversations are no longer just words. They become layers of signals that need to be processed. While others enjoy simple connection, they are constantly reading between lines, picking up details that can feel overwhelming. It becomes difficult to relax around people when the mind keeps analyzing every shift in energy. Their emotional depth adds another layer to this experience. They do not just notice emotions, they absorb them. A tense environment can feel heavy. A negative mood can stay with them long after the moment has passed. Being around too many people or unpredictable energy can quickly drain them. Because of this, solitude starts to feel safer and more stable. It gives them space to reset, to think clearly, and to reconnect with their own emotions without interference from others. This distance is often misunderstood. From the outside, it may look like they are avoiding people or pushing others away. In reality, it is a form of protection and clarity. They are selective about who they allow into their space because they understand how deeply interactions affect them. They recognize patterns in behavior that others ignore, and that awareness shapes their choices. They do not avoid people because they hate them. They avoid people because they understand them. There is a hidden strength in them that most people never fully notice. It does not show up as loud confidence or obvious power. It moves quietly in the way they observe, respond, and understand situations before they unfold. Their emotional intelligence is built through experience, not theory. They have spent years learning how emotions shift, how people react under pressure, and how small details reveal larger truths. Because of this, they can read emotional environments with precision. They understand tone beyond words. They sense discomfort behind a smile. They notice when someone is holding back, even when everything on the surface looks normal. Their intuition becomes one of their strongest tools. It is not random or based on guesswork. It is the result of patterns their mind has collected over time. Every past experience adds to this internal system, allowing them to recognize familiar signals almost instantly. When something feels off, it usually is. When a situation feels genuine, they can sense that as well. This creates a level of awareness that often feels difficult to explain to others. People may ask how they knew something, and the answer rarely comes in clear steps. It is a feeling that forms faster than logic can catch up. They also develop a sharp ability to sense lies, energy, and hidden intentions. It is not always about the words being said, but how they are said, when they are said, and what is missing. Inconsistencies stand out. Forced expressions feel unnatural. Energy shifts become noticeable even in quiet moments. This makes it hard for others to deceive them for long. Even when they stay silent, they are processing everything. They are connecting dots that most people do not even see. This awareness can create a quiet confidence. They do not always need proof or validation because their understanding runs deeper than surface-level information. They trust their instincts because those instincts were shaped under real pressure. You cannot lie to someone who learned truth the hard way. There is a side to this personality that rarely gets attention, and it carries a quiet weight that builds over time. Emotional burnout becomes a constant cycle. Feeling everything so deeply means they rarely get a break from the intensity around them. Even when nothing is happening on the surface, their mind continues to process past conversations, hidden meanings, and emotional signals they picked up earlier. This ongoing awareness slowly drains their energy. It becomes difficult to fully relax because their system has been trained to stay alert even in calm moments. Overthinking becomes a natural extension of this awareness. Every word, every reaction, every small shift in behavior can trigger a chain of thoughts. They replay situations, trying to understand what was said, what was meant, and what was left unsaid. A simple interaction can turn into hours of analysis. This does not come from insecurity alone, but from a habit of searching for deeper meaning. Their mind is always connecting dots, even when there is nothing left to solve. It creates a mental loop that is hard to break, especially when their instincts are usually accurate. Connection with others starts to feel complicated. On one hand, they understand people deeply. On the other hand, they struggle to feel understood themselves. Conversations can feel one-sided, where they are the ones noticing everything while others barely scratch the surface. It becomes difficult to open up when they sense that most people will not fully grasp what is happening inside them. This creates a distance that grows over time, even in relationships that seem close from the outside. At the same time, they carry silent battles that few people ever see. They manage their emotions privately, often choosing to process things alone rather than burden others. From the outside, they may appear calm, composed, and in control. Inside, there can be constant movement, thoughts shifting, emotions rising and falling without being expressed. They learn to hold everything in, to maintain balance without showing the struggle behind it. They can read everyone, but no one really reads them. There comes a moment that does not arrive loudly, yet it changes everything. It builds slowly through repeated experiences where patience feels stretched, where understanding others begins to feel one-sided, and where emotional weight becomes too heavy to carry the same way again. It is the point where they stop tolerating pain that once felt normal. Situations that they used to excuse or absorb start to feel different. The same behaviors that they once tried to understand now create distance instead. Something shifts internally, and it becomes clear that continuing in the same pattern will only lead to more exhaustion. This shift does not come from anger alone, it comes from clarity. They begin to see how much of themselves they have been giving away, how often they have stayed silent to keep peace, and how frequently their own needs were pushed aside. That awareness creates a quiet decision. They start setting boundaries, sometimes in small ways at first. They say less, they pull back. They choose where their energy goes. It is not about shutting people out completely, but about protecting what has been drained for too long. These boundaries may feel uncomfortable in the beginning, especially when others are used to the older version of them. As this continues, emotional detachment begins to form. It is not coldness, and it is not a loss of empathy. It is a controlled distance that allows them to stay balanced. They no longer react to every situation with the same intensity. They observe more and invest less where it is not valued. This creates a noticeable change in how they interact with people. They become quieter, more selective, and more grounded in their responses. The need to explain every feeling or justify every decision starts to fade. People around them may sense this shift, even if they cannot fully understand it. Reactions that once worked no longer have the same effect. Emotional pressure does not pull the same response. There is a calm firmness in their behavior that was not there before. The day they change is the day they stop explaining themselves. The path through this kind of transformation is narrow, and many do not move beyond the early stages. Pain can become familiar, almost predictable, and that familiarity keeps people in the same cycle. They continue to feel deeply, to absorb everything around them, yet they never reach a point where they take control of it. Instead of using their awareness as a strength, it becomes a weight that keeps pulling them back into the same emotional patterns. Days blend into each other with the same internal pressure, the same overthinking, and the same sense of being overwhelmed by everything they notice. Some move in a different direction and lose themselves while trying to fix others. Their ability to understand pain makes them naturally step into roles where they support, guide, and help. At first, it feels meaningful. It gives them a sense of purpose. Over time, it becomes draining. They begin to give more than they can sustain, trying to repair people who are not ready to change. Their energy spreads thin, and their own needs slowly fade into the background. The more they try to help, the more they feel disconnected from themselves. It becomes difficult to separate their identity from the role they have taken on. Only a few begin to recognize this pattern before it consumes them completely. They start to turn their focus inward, not in a selfish way, but in a necessary way. They learn to manage their awareness instead of being controlled by it. They begin to understand that strength comes from balance, from knowing when to engage and when to step back. This shift allows them to rebuild in a more stable and controlled way. Their emotional depth remains, but it becomes guided rather than overwhelming. The difference between those who remain stuck and those who move forward often comes down to this internal shift. It is not about becoming less sensitive, but about learning how to carry that sensitivity without letting it take over. Most people break, a few rebuild. The path through this kind of transformation is narrow, and many do not move beyond the early stages. Pain can become familiar, almost predictable, and that familiarity keeps people in the same cycle. They continue to feel deeply, to absorb everything around them, yet they never reach a point where they take control of it. Instead of using their awareness as a strength, it becomes a weight that keeps pulling them back into the same emotional patterns. Days blend into each other with the same internal pressure, the same overthinking, and the same sense of being overwhelmed by everything they notice. Some move in a different direction and lose themselves while trying to fix others. Their ability to understand pain makes them naturally step into roles where they support, guide, and help. At first, it feels meaningful. It gives them a sense of purpose. Over time, it becomes draining. They begin to give more than they can sustain, trying to repair people who are not ready to change. Their energy spreads thin, and their own needs slowly fade into the background. The more they try to help, the more they feel disconnected from themselves. It becomes difficult to separate their identity from the role they have taken on. Only a few begin to recognize this pattern before it consumes them completely. They start to turn their focus inward, not in a selfish way, but in a necessary way. They learn to manage their awareness instead of being controlled by it. They begin to understand that strength comes from balance, from knowing when to engage and when to step back. This shift allows them to rebuild in a more stable and controlled way. Their emotional depth remains, but it becomes guided rather than overwhelming. The difference between those who remain stuck and those who move forward often comes down to this internal shift. It is not about becoming less sensitive, but about learning how to carry that sensitivity without letting it take over. Most people break, a few rebuild. The final transformation does not look dramatic from the outside, yet it carries a quiet strength that is difficult to ignore. Their presence feels different. There is a sense of calm that replaces the constant tension they once carried. It is not the kind of calm that comes from avoiding life, but the kind that comes from understanding it. Situations that once triggered strong emotional reactions now meet a steady and measured response. They take a moment before reacting. They observe before speaking. This creates a balance that was not there before, allowing them to stay grounded even when things around them shift. This calm is often misunderstood. Some may see it as distance or lack of emotion, but it is neither. It is control. They still feel deeply, but those feelings no longer control their actions. Emotions pass through them without taking over their decisions. This gives them a clarity that allows them to move through situations without being pulled in different directions. Their energy remains stable, and that stability becomes one of their strongest traits. At the same time, they become more selective in how they connect with others. This is not loneliness, it is intention. They choose who they spend time with based on alignment rather than convenience. Conversations become more meaningful. Relationships become fewer but deeper. They no longer feel the need to be understood by everyone. Instead, they focus on maintaining connections that respect their boundaries and match their level of awareness. This selectiveness protects their energy and allows them to stay consistent in who they have become. There is also a shift in how they carry power. It becomes quiet and controlled rather than expressive and reactive. They do not need to prove anything through words or actions. Their confidence comes from experience and self-understanding. They know when to engage and when to step back. They recognize situations that deserve their attention and those that do not. This creates a sense of authority in their presence without the need for recognition. They do not need attention, they control their energy. So being a trauma-born empath loner is not a weakness, it is a rare transformation. It is a path shaped by pressure, awareness, and experiences that most people will never fully understand. Every stage carries weight, from the early confusion to the silent battles, and then to the moment where everything begins to shift. The strength that forms through this process is quiet, controlled, and deeply rooted. It does not seek validation, and it does not need to be seen to exist. but only if you survive it. Do you feel like this describes you? Let me know in the comments. And if this made you think, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.